go over the matches you need to see. So, if you've not been listening to the pod before, this is essentially just a segment we do where each week we take it in turns to pick out matches that we just think you should go watch, no matter what the reason. It could be that it's just like a bloody good match, or could be that it's so bad that you just have to see how bad it is. Could just be really funny, whatever the reason. So, given it's his debut episode, again, we handed it over to Jace this week. So, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so my pick was the Bastard Pack against Cara Noir from Riptide.
Of course you Northerners whap out a pack match straight away. Of course you do.
It's War Geordie Pack, man.
It's War Geordie Pack. I chose this match because it was the first match I saw with Pac post WWE. First match I saw with Cara Noir. Since then, I know me and Greg have both seen him in person at North. But I like this match just because it shows how good Pac is at the character work, where he is constantly like antagonising the crowd and just basically living up to his name of being a bastard.
Mm.
I think to that as well, it's not just great character work for Parker. You're right, this was sort of one of his bigger, more notable appearances since leaving WWE, but it shows how well Cara Noir is at just storytelling in the ring. So, funnily enough, before we kind of picked this match, he did an interview with Wrestle Talk where he talked about how no matter what the match is, he always likes to try and craft some kind of story around it. And I think for this one, it's just the fact he just wants a handshake from Pac. That's all he really wants at the end of the day. And that's what the whole match is effectively built around. And it's just amazing just to watch them go from Cara just basically being like, no, come on, shake my hand. And then they just completely brutalize one another.
And I think with it as well, just a British wrestling crowd adds so much to the match. Like a relatively small British crowd, you can hear every chant, and I haven't really seen that from any promotions in America where they get a crowd that small gets that loud, and that passionate about the guys in the ring.
I know we're very biased as British people, but you know we're the best at chants and we're the best at crowds just because we're fucking rowdy. It doesn't mean we can often be the worst because we might just find something fucking hilarious and not stop. But if you're in the ring giving your all, we will be paying attention.
No, absolutely. I mean, because it's the thing with British crowds, when you look at all of the sports, pretty much like, football, rugby, whatever, the crowd, that's where the sort of crowd mentality comes from. And I think it's just not something present in American crowds. Like, they're just a bit too pleasant when it comes to it, if you know what I mean. Like, if you watch them like an American football game, you won't see them doing the typical kind of like chants you'd find in English crowds. It's like when they did NXT TakeOver in London, and one of the reasons that is just such a brilliant show is just because the crowd are absolutely amazing throughout the whole thing. Like, you won't find any other chance in an NXT show like you will on that particular TakeOver.
Yeah, one of my favourite chants in all of wrestling came from that show, which was "Top Not Wanker."
It's a popular one. I mean, like, going off like small indie crowds, I mean, I've been to shows with both of you, but I think Jace will agree when we saw... It's a match we'll probably bring onto this segment because it is absolutely phenomenal when it was Ilya Dragunov and Jordan Devlin when Progress were in Newcastle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, that was like the closest
fantastic match.
Yeah, fantastic match, but it was the crowd especially that helped. That was like the closest thing I've seen to like a football-style chant and atmosphere to a match. It was like the crowd... like the match itself was perfect the way it was, but if it wasn't for that crowd as well, it just tipped it into the next level.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to gush about Progress crowds like many times during this podcast, having especially been part of them as well. But like I think just to go back to like American versus UK crowds or just like globally different places, it's a weird... I don't know if it's necessarily the right format for us to have that discussion, but you could really go in depth on like how different they are in just like how structured they are. Because it's weird to say that, you know, crowds do have structures. You go there and because of where you are and what you're used to like the social setting of it. In an American football game, they're used to having the cheerleaders tell them to cheer. That's why they're there, to hype up the crowd. In UK stuff, we don't really have that, I suppose. Maybe Jim Smallman will come out at the start of Progress and give you a little, or tell you your shirt looks fucking dumb or something, and you know, everyone will laugh at you, and that's how you get hyped up. But it's not the same as like some scantily clad cheerleaders going, "Give me a Y, give me an E, give me an S." Yes.
I mean, I think it is just the case that, you know, Americans can just be a bit too polite, you know, when it comes to these kind of things. Whereas, you know, give a British guy a beer and put him in a crowd, he will generally say whatever the fuck he wants. And as a result, that'll just kind of happen all the way around. And that's why if you go to something like Progress or to North or Riptide or wherever, you're guaranteed to hear at least some familiar chants. Like there's some that will just always be brought up, but then you'll at least hear one or two things that are just completely unique and they'll probably never be chanted again. So there's always just like, it's just one of those things where British crowds just have that kind of edge over the American ones, I think. Which is why it's weird. It's kind of weird watching something like NXT UK because that doesn't seem to happen on that show. Like the kind of crowd, like the kind of chance you get some, but I'm guessing they've probably been making them tame it back a bit because there's probably some tracks that just couldn't air on the network.
Yeah, I think they do. You know, at the beginning of a lot of those shows, they do have people come out and say, you know, tone it down a little bit. And I suppose a British crowd isn't really the right fit for televised wrestling sometimes.
Yeah, true.
See, I think another part of it is, like, quite a lot of Brits know what it's like to go to a football match and it just be a really bad match. So instead of watching the game, you'll just make your own entertainment, which is where a lot of the chants come from. Like I've heard chants about a player who plays for Newcastle United, John Joe Shelby, looking like Lord Voldemort. Jordan Pickford, the England goalkeeper, can't reach the crossbar, he's only got little arms. And I think it's just one of them things, and we are so good at taking the piss out of people compared to Americans, because we have sarcasm is a lot more prevalent here compared to America.
No, I agree. I think that's something the British kind of champion is, not only just classic British sarcasm, but British wit as well. We can just be generally quite... British people can be quite funny without even thinking about it. You know what I mean? It just kind of comes a bit naturally from having like been born and raised in the UK. So I think that's just kind of why it translates into chanting. But yeah, going back to the match, I remember I was kind of made aware of this because not only did it kind of did make the rounds online a bit, because if you did want to go watch this, by the way, it is free on the Riptide YouTube channel, so you don't have to pay for anything, you can just go watch it straight after this. But it was mentioned, I think it was in the final issue of Fighting Spirit magazine, because they were closing print and moving over to Wrestle Talk. They did the 50 greatest matches, and this one came just at number 50, and it was the most recent one on the list. So it just kind of go to show like how much of a strong contender it is, because it is just a fantastic match from start to finish. Anything to add on top of that, guys?
Yeah, I think just...
after you.
No, go. No, go.
I insist.
Okie doke. I think it's just another example of sometimes smaller crowds being better than the bigger crowds. Because I think if that match was in a, like say in an arena, I don't think it would have been as popular, because it would have been too... I'm trying to think of the word. Too much going on with the crowd for the focus to be on the wrestling. But with that smaller crowd, it just worked.
Yeah, the product itself, just like talking about how it's filmed and the production behind it. I haven't seen much Riptide, obviously, when you talk about wrestling this way, you're usually talking about like how it would be live, I suppose, and things like that. But the product is really good. I looked at the credits on the YouTube, and it was edited and filmed by Wild Stag Studios. And I actually contacted them earlier today, just asking them, anything you can tell me about it. It was, very good. We liked it. And a man named Dave replied to me. He said, it's mainly about the lighting to create nice images. And if you watch it, it's very dimly lit on the outside, kind of moody, I suppose. Unlike your which a lot of like indie, especially British stuff is. We quite like our dingy pubs, and we quite like our dingy wrestling. But you've got this like bright light in the center, kind of smoky atmosphere. There's always a lot of like smoke just hanging above as well. He just says we use a mixture of our Sony Alpha cameras and handheld gimbal stabilizers to get smooth shots. Very nice of him to just weigh in there. But it is a really good like production. Whether you prefer the kind of classic 2 camera either side and single hard cam, that's your preference. I think I prefer this Riptide style where you can get in really close, you can have these like intimate shots and really tell the story a little bit more.
No, I agree. That was one thing I brought up was, the production-wise and camera work in this is fantastic. So, well done for getting in touch, but I didn't realise. I thought, because the thing is with, like, Progress do fairly well at shooting a show, but I'll be the first to admit the camera work isn't always the most stellar. Like, it does still have that kind of indie rawness to it, if that makes sense. Whereas this does feel like slightly more advanced for an indie show. Like, some of the camera angles they're getting and the camera work that they've done with it, it looks incredibly professional, but given that they must use like this professional team, that does make a lot more sense.
Yeah, looking at their portfolio, they're very good at what they do.
Did you find it weird at all watching a match without commentary? Because that's one thing that seems to be missing from Riptide.
You know what? I didn't even think about it because I was so invested in the way it was produced and these two in the ring. I may be misremembering because I don't remember him too well from when I did a few training sessions there, but I'm pretty sure Cara Noir trained at the London School of Lucha Libre. He was out of makeup, but I'm pretty sure it's the same guy who occasionally taught me a few things as well. But having known him training, which, like I say, I believe it's him because he's so in character and great as the Black Swan, as Cara Noir, that it's so difficult to really like differentiate the two.
Yeah, no. A question I want to pose to you then. So like, this was kind of the match, as kind of Jace mentioned, that kind of really sort of put Cara on the map in terms of like the independent scene, and he's kind of shot up since then. Like he won the Progress title at the start of this year before everything had to go into lockdown. I'm pretty sure he was the Attack champion as well. He won the WXW 16 Carat of Gold tournament, so he's been on a banner year. If he does eventually make the step up, where do you think he would go in terms of a major promotion? Like, where do you think might use him the best?
Well, those are two different questions. Where he'd go and who'd use him the best are two annoyingly different questions. I think he'd probably maybe go to NXT UK. I remember he had a match with Pete Dunne. I think that was the one we watched at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, he did.
And Pete Dunne did a promo afterwards because that was around the time where a lot of people were worried about NXT UK and them signing up all the talent, and there just being there was a worry that anyone on NXT UK wouldn't be able to work anywhere else. And I remember he did a promo where it said, British wrestling is not in trouble when we've got people like this in the pipeline. And like, very true. But I think he'd most likely go to NXT UK. I think NXT UK could do wonders with him. But really, I think his character could fit in most places. I think they could make it work in NXT UK. I think they could make it work in New Japan. I don't know. I hope it picks up soon because he's the current Progress champion, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's still the Progress champion because he literally won the belt maybe a month or two before they had to go into lockdown.
Yeah. Fingers crossed we open back up, because I think he could really be a massively dominant force in the UK scene, and even should he go overseas, should he go anywhere else, I think the character can really, really work.
Yeah, no, I agree. Same to you, Jace. What do you think?
Yeah, I think NXT UK would be a fantastic fit for him. Like we've seen him have multiple matches, and he just seems to have good chemistry with so many people. But just keep him away from Vince.
I think that is going to be a situation. If he did go with WWE, Vince would look at this and just not have a clue what to do with, I think.
No,
but
just keep him away from Vince.
one thing that does excite me is if he did make it to the main roster and he did, do well, imagine the WrestleMania entrance he could have.
Alright, that's it. Now I want WrestleMania, Finn Balor, Cara Noir.
See that's simple. You just make NXT part of the main roster during WrestleMania season, and there you go.
Yeah, and then just keep him back on NXT because he'll do well.
You have Black Swan versus Demon for the NXT Championship.
See, that's just got money written all over it right there. I'm just picturing, because obviously if people haven't seen his entrance before, you should go out and check it, because he's probably got one of the more unique entrances in wrestling. I'm just imagining he'll just have like a huge swan wings that will just like extend. Do you know like when Lordi played Eurovision?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Just like big ass wings will just extend, like automated wings will just extend out, and all the glitter.
All the glitter.
All the glitter. Anything else you want to touch on that one, lads?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it.
I think we're good. Well, thank you very much for that one, Jace. That was a top pick, and as mentioned, if you did want to go watch it, it's free on the Riptide YouTube, so enjoy, people.